We used to joke about the miserable leftists and the anti-Christian woke brigade and how they'd want to kill Christmas if they could. Well, it's no longer a joke. Under the guise of pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel protests, that's exactly what these Grinches have tried to do. As you would have heard, the official launch event for the Myer Christmas windows in Melbourne was cancelled because of fears about the protesters, turning a fun event into a pretty dismal affair.
Myer cancelled its party and pulled back the curtain on its Christmas windows early at 7 o'clock this morning. There was barely anyone on Burke Street to celebrate with Santa.
Yeah, it was pretty sad. Christmas cheer was replaced by Christmas fears. And even still, the idiotic protesters soon turned up, bringing their Christmas jeers to an event designed to brighten lives, especially for kids.
We shouldn't have to put up with this, and neither should the children in Australia. Enough is enough, Australia. Time to fight back.
Some took that upon themselves.
It's time for Christmas and for the kids. You're crazy.
This woman asked for, then snapped one of the protesters' signs.
Sanction Israel. In the genocide. We don't have to do this anymore. I'd rather go to yoga.
Should be in the gutter. This is for the kids. Don't ruin it for them.
These protesters are rude, they're selfish, and they're wrong. They're just hopelessly ill-informed, of course. All Zionists are terrorists, they chanted. In other words, there should be no state of Israel. These people are not about peace. They're not about justice or about people in the Middle East living side by side. They're about getting rid of Israel. I wonder, do they know anything about Christmas? Do they know it celebrates the birth of Jesus Christ, who happens to have been a Jew? Do they know the first Christmas was more than 2,000 years ago and that it happened in Bethlehem? Yeah, right there on the West Bank, just 10 kilometres from the middle of Jerusalem. Yeah, Jesus' parents were Jews and they came from Nazareth in Galilee, right up there by the Sea of Galilee in modern Israel in the north. They travelled all the way down through what is now the West Bank to Bethlehem for the birth. All territory that is now either part of Israel or occupied by Israel. Doesn't it occur to these mindless and hateful protesters that the very story of Christmas, the facts of Christmas, whether you believe in the sanctity of it or not, the facts of Christmas are actually a timely reminder of the place of Jews in that part of the world, the place of the Jews in Jerusalem, in the Holy Lands, in Israel, long before anyone even came up with the word Palestine. Don't pretend the Jews are modern imposters. Don't pretend they're some kind of white colonialists. Just deal in reality and ask yourself, who is trying to eradicate whom from the Middle East? Which country has worked hardest for peace and plurality, for democracy and fairness in the Middle East? And ask yourself why the protesters don't call for the release of hostages, don't call for the capture of murderous terrorists, and don't call on Hamas and Hezbollah to stop killing innocent people. Why not? Why do they support organisations committed to genocide and terrorism and the obliteration of the Jewish people? Where's the humanity in that? And another thing. Why do state governments and police forces allow protesters to bully people like this? They say they're upset about what's happened with the Christmas display.
No one has the right to try and ruin someone else's tradition. To anyone who wants to spread hate and division here in the city of Melbourne, here across Victoria, there is no place for you. There is no place for this behaviour.
But hang on a second. What about the role of the Victorian government and the police there? We know that during COVID they were brutal on arresting and dispersing any lawbreakers or protesters. Yet since COVID, when it comes to climate protesters blocking the roads, The government and police have been laid back, sometimes leaving it to citizens to step in. And they've let regular anti-Israel protests take over the city streets, chanting offensive slogans and often directing hatred at Jewish Australians. And the police haven't intervened then to return the streets to all citizens. In fact, the Premier's been clear.
People have a right to come together and to peacefully protest, and that right should absolutely be respected.
Yeah, they let them go, like they've done in Sydney with the hateful chants and the celebrations over the slaughter of innocent Israelis. There's been nothing but deference to these hateful protests. And then they wonder why Myer or any other organisation or group is too frightened to celebrate Christmas, too worried that protesters will disrupt their right to enjoy their lives. That's the real worry here, the real lesson. The softly approach of the state governments and their police forces, so desperate to respect the so-called rights of the protesters, well, they've left law-abiding citizens vulnerable to these protests. The activists are restricting the rights, they're restricting the liberties of their fellow citizens. And that should not be tolerated.